Ready?
You ready?
All right, are you ready, John? We're ready. Ready? Call the Village of Carlisle Council meeting to order. Would everyone please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Bicknell?
Here.
Mr. Jewett?
Here.
Mr. McIntosh?
Here.
Ms. Tankersley? Mr. Humphries?
Here.
Mayor Winkler?
To make a motion for Mr. McIntosh to act as chairman for tonight's meeting.
Second that motion.
Mr. Jewett?
Yes.
Mr. McIntosh?
Yes.
Mr. Bicknell?
Yes.
Mr. Humphries?
Yes.
Do we have a motion to excuse Mayor Winkler and Mrs. Tankersley?
So moved.
Second.
Would you like to?
Ms. Tankersley could not be here tonight. She has a mandatory work meeting that she informed us that she could not get out of to be here. And Mr. Winkler has a family emergency that he needed to attend to tonight.
Thank you.
Mr. Humphries?
Yes.
Mr. McIntosh?
Yes.
Mr. Jewett?
Yes.
Mr. Bicknell?
Yes.
Motion approved. First item, the minutes. Do we have a motion to suspend the reading of the minutes by the clerk for the regular scheduled meeting of August 28th?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. McIntosh?
Yes.
Mr. Bicknell?
Yes.
Mr. Humphries?
Yes.
Mr. Jewett?
Yes.
Any additions or subtractions from the minutes? Seeing none, do we have a motion to approve the minutes of August 28th?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Bicknell?
Yes.
Mr. Jewett?
Yes.
Mr. Humphries?
Yes.
Mr. McIntosh?
Yes. Minutes have been adopted. Under B, special meeting, do we have a meeting to suspend the reading of the minutes by the clerk for the special meeting of September 4th?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Bicknell?
Yes.
Mr. Humphries?
Yes.
Mr. Jewett?
Yes.
Mr. McIntosh?
Yes. Are there any additions or subtractions for the minutes? Seeing none, motion to adopt?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Jewett?
Yes.
Mr. McIntosh?
Yes.
Mr. Humphries?
Yes.
Mr. Bicknell?
Yes.
Minutes of September 4th have been approved. Public forum, is there anyone in the audience that would like to approach council? If so, come to the podium and state your name and address for the record, please. Seeing none, we will close public forum. Council report. Mr. Bicknell would like to start.
I would just like to send out prayers and thoughts to the family of the Carlisle student. I can't imagine what they're going through right now. Just send prayers their way and hope that they see somewhat some hope or some type of closure in whatever tends to happen. That is all.
I have nothing this evening.
Mr. Humphries?
I went to the vigil last night, and it was mixed emotions. A lot of great words by teachers, faculty, staff, and it kind of goes back to the same question I asked, and what is community? And there was a lot of community outreach last night. It needs to not only be when there's a tragedy, it needs to be before that, during that, after that. And then obviously today's an anniversary of one of our greatest tragedies. So With that being said, may God continue to bless our country, and let's think positive prayers and thoughts for the Winkler family. Thank you.
Thank you. For mine, yeah, obviously our thoughts, there's a lot going on in the community right now, so our thoughts are with everyone. There's a couple different issues going on. So our thoughts to everyone involved, the school situation, or the student situation, and some others. And obviously with Mayor Winkler and his family, with his father. There's just so much going on. Obviously nothing that appears good in the news, but there is a lot of good going on in the community. So I would like to challenge everybody to, to keep an eye on that as well. This is a great place to live. We all choose to live here for numerous reasons. So just keep that in mind, and I challenge everyone in our community to be better. To be better parents, to be better, friends and neighbors, be better children, be better council members, to be better. Whatever your role in the community is, be better. We owe it to each other to be better neighbors, keep an eye on each other, and to step in when need be. That's all for me. We'll have no mayor's report this evening. Manager's report, Ms. Duffy.
The only thing I had tonight was just to reiterate the sentiments that's been expressed before me. I also attended last night's vigil, and we were reminded at that vigil that we are a small community, and to embrace the positive aspects of being a small community. And sometimes we forget that there is an automatic built-in support system available to us being part of a small community, and it gets overshadowed at times by the minute details in life that tend to get in the way. So just remember, we are all in this together, and hopefully something positive can be sought to come out of something so tragic. And that's all I have this evening.
Thank you. Moving on to committee report. We did have a finance committee meeting prior to tonight's meeting. I'm the chair. I'll give a quick report on that. We did meet prior to tonight's meeting. Mr. Rushing was here and gave a very informative and detailed presentation on a couple items. The first one was a reserve balance policy. Even though we've operated in the immediate past pretty much by a 20% unencumbered fund balance for each fund, maintaining a 20% balance in each fund. He has presented some legislation to make that formal ordinance, and that'll be discussed later on tonight's meeting. But it is a good policy to have in place for the books, just to make sure we're compliant and to make sure that future generations have adopted ordinances to operate by. And second, he presented a formal investment policy. We do have a policy in place that was enacted in 1996. So this would update that to match state code and other aspects of compliance, and outline how we could use village money for investment to grow and not just sit in fund balances now that the economy is better. All of our balances are in very good shape. So that is an avenue that we will likely proceed in the near future that we haven't in quite some time. So I would like to thank Mr. Rushing and all of his information. I think he's doing a wonderful job. Always has answered every question we asked, and his work is very detailed, so thank you for that. And we will be meeting, Finance Committee meeting will be meeting in October to start the budget process. And that is it for Finance Committee. Next, under old business, we have nothing under old business. New business, there's also nothing under new business. And first readings of ordinance and resolutions. Due to tonight's situation with Mayor Winkler and Mrs. Tankersley being absent, all readings will be postponed. All first readings will be postponed until September 25th, as all the first readings have either emergency language or single reading language that requires a minimum vote of 5. Each piece of legislation will be read by title only. It will need a motion after the title reading to postpone the action. Under letter A, Resolution 1418, accepting the tax rate and amounts for Warren County.
A resolution accepting the amounts and rates as determined by the Budget Commission and the authorizing of the necessary tax levies and certifying them to the county auditor and declaring an emergency.
I move to postpone the pending motion until our next regular meeting.
Second.
Mr. Humphries?
Yes.
Mr. Bicknell?
Yes.
Mr. Jewett?
Yes.
Mr. McIntosh?
Yes. Reading for Resolution 1418 will be postponed until the next regular meeting. Item B, Resolution 1518, accepting the tax rates and amounts for Montgomery County.
A resolution accepting the amounts and rates as determined by the Budget Commission and authorizing of the necessary tax levies and certifying them to the county auditor and declaring an emergency.
I move to postpone the pending motion until our next regular meeting.
Second.
Mr. McIntosh?
Yes.
Mr. Jewett?
Yes.
Mr. Bicknell?
Yes.
Mr. Humphries?
Yes.
The reading of Resolution 1518 has been postponed to the next regular meeting. Item C, Ordinance 1618, $200,000 various purpose bond and anticipation note renewal.
An ordinance providing for the issuance of $200,000 various purpose bond anticipation notes, 2018 renewal by the municipality of Carlisle, Ohio, in anticipation of the issuance of bonds and is on as a single reading.
I move to postpone the pending motion until our next regular meeting.
Second.
Mr. McIntosh?
Yes.
Mr. Bicknell?
Yes.
Mr. Humphries?
Yes.
Mr. Jewett?
Yes.
Ordinance 1618 will also be postponed until the next regular meeting. Item D, Ordinance 1718, transfer of $50,000 from general fund to Carlisle Business Park Fund.
An ordinance authorizing the transfer of $50,000 from the General Fund 101 to Carlisle Business Park Fund 302 and is on as a single reading.
I move to postpone the pending motion until our next regular meeting.
Second.
Mr. Humphries?
Yes.
Mr. Bicknell?
Yes.
Mr. Jewett?
Yes.
Mr. McIntosh?
Yes. So Ordinance 1718 has also been postponed. Item E, Ordinance 1818, transfer of $95,000 from Eagle Ridge TIF to State Route 123 funds.
An ordinance authorizing the transfer of $95,000 from the Eagle Ridge TIF Fund 210 to State Route 123 funds 412, 413, 414, and 415 and is on as a single reading.
I move to postpone the pending motion until our next regular meeting.
Second.
Mr. Jewett?
Yes.
Mr. Humphries?
Yes.
Mr. Bicknell?
Yes.
Mr. McIntosh?
Yes. Ordinance 1818 will be on for reading at the next regular meeting. Ordinance 1918, accepting the dedication of Auburn Meadows Court, Timber Ridge, Section 8.
An ordinance accepting the dedication of a street, Auburn Meadows Court, Timber Ridge, Section 8, and on as a single reading.
I move to postpone the pending motion until the next regular meeting.
And a second.
Mr. Jewett?
Yes.
Mr. McIntosh?
We discussed this, but just so everybody knows, Associate has been contacted, and this does not present any kind of issue into their plans. Yes.
Mr. Humphries?
Yes.
Mr. Bicknell?
Yes.
Ordinance 1918 has been postponed until our next regular meeting. Ordinance 2018, amending Chapter 236 to add new section of Fund Reserve Policy.
An ordinance amending Chapter 236, Department of Finance by adding a new section, 236.10, Fund Reserve Policy, and is on as a single reading.
I move to postpone the pending motion until our next regular meeting.
Second.
Mr. Bicknell?
Yes.
Mr. Jewett?
Yes.
Mr. Humphries?
Yes.
Mr. McIntosh?
Yes. Ordinance 2018 has been postponed. The reading has been postponed until our next regular meeting. And item H, ordinance 2118, adopting policies and procedures for selecting depositories and investments.
An ordinance adopting the policies and procedures of the municipality for selecting depositories and making investments, amending ordinance 23-96, and is on as a single reading.
I move to postpone the pending motion until our next regular meeting.
Second.
Mr. Humphries?
Yes.
Mr. Bicknell?
Yes.
Mr. Jewett?
Yes.
Mr. McIntosh?
Yes. Ordinance 2118 has been postponed for a reading at our next scheduled regular meeting. Moving on to second and third readings of ordinances and resolutions. Item A, ordinance 1518, amendment of the Carlisle zoning map to change specific parcel classifications. That is on for a second reading.
An ordinance amending the Carlisle zoning map to change the zoning classification of specific parcels.
Any discussion? Hearing none. Ordinance 1518 will be on for a third reading and adoption at the next regular meeting. Moving down to executive session. There is no executive session on tonight's agenda. Do we have a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
Second?
Mr. Jewett?
Yes.
Mr. McIntosh?
Yes.
Mr. Bicknell?
Yes.
Mr. Humphries?
Yes.
We are adjourned.
That almost a record.
That was a lot.